Imagine waking up one morning and realizing the money you spent years working for vanished overnight. Not because you made a bad decision, but because you trusted a market that looked safe, steady, and unstoppable. Financial bubbles don't announce their arrival, they quietly build until they explode. And when they do, the people who suffer most are the ones who never saw it coming. Today, let's talk about how to recognize the warning signs before they cost you everything. A bubble takes shape when prices start rising faster than logic can support. It begins quietly. A few investors notice a trend, money flows in, and confidence grows. Soon, the excitement spreads and people stop evaluating what something is truly worth. They're not buying because the asset makes financial sense. They're buying because everyone else seems to be doing it. This shift from rational thinking to emotional decision-making is where the danger starts. You'll notice conversations change too. Instead of asking, is this a solid investment? People ask, how fast can I get in before it's too late? That urgency blinds them to warning signs, weak earnings, shaky business model, unrealistic promises, and valuations rising far beyond actual performance. When demand becomes driven by fear of missing out rather than genuine value, prices detach from reality. And once that disconnect grows large enough, it doesn't take much to trigger panic. The moment investors sense that growth might be slowing, they rush to sell. This sudden change in sentiment is what turns a slow-building bubble into a dramatic fall. The key is recognizing when price momentum is no longer supported by real-world fundamentals. When growth feels too easy and too fast, that's your cue to step back before volatility does the damage for you. Every major bubble has one thing in common. The story becomes more powerful than the truth. People fall in love with the idea of what an asset could become even when the real numbers don't. Support the excitement. You'll hear claims that this time is different, that the old rules no longer apply, and that the opportunity is too big to miss. That kind of narrative attracts crowds fast, not because it's accurate, but because it feels exciting. The problem is that excitement doesn't create value, performance does. When you look closely at these situations, you'll often find that earnings are weak, cash flow is inconsistent, or the business model is still unproven. But none of that matters to the people caught in the hype. They're focused on potential, not probability. And when the crowd becomes the fuel, prices rise simply because more people are buying, not because the asset is genuinely worth more. This creates a fragile environment. The moment the story cracks, a bad earnings report, a slowdown in growth, or a shift in sentiment, the hype evaporates almost instantly. Investors who bought in at the top suddenly realize they were holding something that never had the strength to justify its price. When fundamentals take a back seat and emotion takes the lead, the bubble is already forming. Cheap credit creates a kind of confidence that feels real in the moment but collapses the second conditions change. When borrowing is easy, people start taking risks they normally wouldn't even consider. They use leverage to chase higher returns, convinced that the market will keep rising and bail them out. This borrowed money fuels rapid price increases, pushing assets far beyond their true value. It's like building a house on sand. It stands tall for a while, but the foundation is weak from the start. The real danger appears when interest rates rise or lending becomes stricter. Suddenly, the same people who felt unstoppable start feeling pressure. Payments get higher, profits shrink, and the optimism that pushed prices up begins to fade. Investors who bought with borrowed money are hit the hardest because they don't have the cushion to absorb losses. As soon as they sense the market slowing down, they rush to exit. That rush creates a chain reaction. One group selling leads to another, then another, turning a small dip into a sharp drop. Panic replaces confidence, and everything inflated by cheap credit begins to unwind. Understanding how leverage shapes market behavior helps you avoid getting caught in the same trap. The most reliable investors aren't the ones trying to time the exact moment a bubble will burst. Instead, they focus on preparing long before anything starts to crack. They understand that markets move in cycles, and no period of explosive growth lasts forever. That awareness shapes every decision they make. They build portfolios with assets that have real strength behind them, things with long-term demand, consistent performance, and the ability to survive economic turbulence. Preparation also means holding enough cash to take advantage of opportunities when others are forced to sell. When markets fall, those who planned ahead aren't panicking. They're buying quality assets at a discount. They also avoid putting all their money into a single trend, no matter how exciting it looks. Diversification protects them from sudden shocks and gives their portfolio room to breathe. Most importantly, they avoid overvalued markets. When something feels too good to be true or prices are rising without solid fundamentals, they either reduce exposure or step aside completely. They aren't driven by fear, they're driven by discipline. This mindset is what keeps their life savings safe. It's not luck. And it's not timing, it's the steady habit of staying prepared before the bubble bursts.